Welcome to Vision. Within the current combat zone, the Donetsk region is experiencing significant activity, while Kursk is one of the most important players in the operations unfolding across the border. Throughout this week, we have witnessed how Russian forces increased their pressure on Pokrovsk while advancing toward the Ukrainian stronghold of Buldar. The circumstances are becoming increasingly grave, and much is at stake. Starting Sunday, September 15th, Ukrainian forces intensified their actions against Russian troops, including ambushes and counterattacks. Following these operations, Russian forces suffered a heavy blow with the destruction of 46 armored vehicles as a result of an ambush carried out by the Ukrainians. To better understand how this operation developed for the Ukrainian forces and what led to it, we will break it down. Our mission is to provide you with the latest information received from the front lines, where the Russian army is currently facing serious problems in Pokrovsk. Additionally, we will discuss the new strategies their forces are implementing in this difficult circumstance. To show your support, make sure to click the subscribe button, activate notifications, and give us a thumbs up before we begin. Let's get to work. The organized operation was carried out by the 2nd Separate Special Purpose Battalion, the 46th Separate Air Transport Brigade, and the 59th Separate Motorized Infantry Brigade of the Armed Forces of Ukraine. The objective of the operation was to confront a column of armored vehicles from the Russian army heading toward the settlement of Ostry in the Donetsk region. The mission was successfully completed, resulting in the destruction of 46 armored vehicles belonging to the Russian army. The operation was a success. There are some intense images of the operation by the Hetman Bogdan Keln's separate brigade that were uploaded to their Telegram account. An unrelenting combined artillery fire was able to decisively halt a formidable Russian column consisting of 46 tanks, armored personnel carriers, and infantry fighting vehicles. The clip captures the moment this event occurred as the Russians advanced in a massive column toward the Ukrainian trenches. Ukrainian defenders claimed they recognized the enemy in time and were prepared to confront and neutralize the threat, thanks to the keen eyes of reconnaissance drone operators. As we approach the front lines of the armed forces of Ukraine, our attack drone units are carrying out precise strikes against Russian armored vehicles. The intensity of the operation is palpable at this moment. A tremendous artillery fire that completely destroyed the armored vehicles has been captured on video. In seconds, the leading tanks were engulfed in flames. If you watch the video, you will see that the Ukrainian forces were able to destroy that Russian armored convoy through highly successful coordinated operations. This is an impressive display of strategies. The circumstances under which the Russian troops found themselves in Pokrovsk were by no means ideal. For approximately the last 2 weeks, the movement toward Pokrovsk has completely halted. Although no advances have been made, losses in this sector continue to accumulate significantly. This month, the Ukrainian army has sent at least 2 brigades ready for combat to Pokrovsk. This is likely an effort to increase ammunition supplies for the units currently participating in important operations. For all those present, the results were evident during the 2 weeks following the fall of Avdiivka on February 17, 2024. Russian military forces experienced a pause in their advance toward Pokrovsk. This pause occurred after they had been making steady progress on the front. The Russian army has suffered some setbacks, and the situation in the Kursk region seems complicated. The Russians launched a surprise counteroffensive against Ukrainian forces in the Kursk Oblast, and it has been almost a week since they did so. Circumstances are changing rapidly, and every action taken on the ground is important. On the other hand, it has not been precisely a surprise for Ukraine. To achieve its strategic objective, the Russians needed to draw well-equipped troops away from the Ukrainian conflict and into their own country. In the last week, the Russians have finally taken the bait after the deployment of troops from Kaliningrad and the famous TikTok Chechen warriors known for posing with double machine guns. Russia has withdrawn a significant number of its elite battalions from Ukraine and relocated them to Kursk. This move is a consequence of the first. Throughout the last 2 years, the dynamics of operations on the battlefield in Ukraine have essentially remained unchanged. Using operational surprise as the primary approach is necessary if a large amount of territory is to be acquired. The first 100 hours are of utmost importance. If you do not seize this opportunity, you will korchos. The Russians have taken control of a significant number of villages and settlements located along the river's course and just beyond their territory. However, all claimed lands are still contested. A senior Russian command officer determined that Ukrainian fortifications in the Kursk Oblast were vulnerable, indicating that it was the right time to capitalize on this advantage. This assessment was made as the Russian counteroffensive gained momentum. As part of a strategic maneuver, Russian forces transferred their troops to Kursk after withdrawing them from the Pokrovsk region, where they had remained stagnant during the conflict. Russian military reports have indicated fluctuations in the number of troops stationed in Kursk, initially declaring an increase from 10,000 to approximately 70,000, followed by a reduction to 30,000, and now a return to 70,000. Army commanders believed this number would exceed 100,000 for a moment. Put yourself in the shoes of a Ukrainian strategist. It is absolutely necessary for Russia to reposition its forces away from the ineffective front lines. Prepare to launch an attack on Kursk, bringing with you a huge amount of weaponry to destroy any bridge the Russians attempt to build across the same river. Success in achieving the objective, in addition to successfully capturing almost 3,000 enemy soldiers, we have gained full control of the riverbanks to the south, achieving a strategic advantage. Time and again, the Russians fail in their attempts to cross the river and are constantly blocked. This will only happen if Ukraine withdraws from the locality, thus allowing the Russians to take control of the situation regarding this front. Ukraine plans to take decisive measures. The construction of a bridge to cross the river may give the Russians the impression that they have the upper hand in the situation. An important factor to consider is the location of the river, which is just under 50 kilometers from the Ukrainian border. If Russian forces manage to build the bridge and cross it, it remains unknown how long they will be able to maintain their hold on that position. The situation will become a stalemate for Russian military forces. If they deploy tens of thousands of troops and Ukrainian forces order their air force to attack the bridge, this would escalate the situation. Under these circumstances, Russian forces would have the responsibility of maintaining a narrow corridor through the river. They would be forced to rely entirely on a narrow land route with the river at their backs and Ukrainian forces advancing in front of them. The Ukrainian army will have complete command and authority over all the territory. Given the current circumstances, it is very unlikely that the Kremlin can replenish the more than 10,000 Russian troops currently stationed on the opposite bank of the river. The Kremlin's approach seems to be based on an unwavering commitment to reinforce resources in the sector, especially after securing its position on the southern flank of the Siem River. However, after the Russians crossed the river, Ukraine did not remain idle. These foreign forces penetrated the Russian border from the southern and western fronts. Although it is highly likely that the Russians were aware of the dangers associated with their strategy, they managed to fall into a trap. In our opinion, Russia is well positioned to advance as it is confident that Ukraine lacks the military power to organize a decisive reaction. The policy they have adopted demonstrates their intention to push the Ukrainians back before the West begins to relax its control over long-range weaponry. It seems that the odds of Russian triumph are slim. The long-range missiles being used by the Ukrainian military are the main determining factor in this situation. The strategy employed by Russia to confront Ukrainian soldiers in Kursk is both strategic and tactical. The Kremlin, for its part, will not be able to continue working with this plan indefinitely. Each day, larger quantities of Western military aid are sent to the Ukrainian armed forces. Furthermore, the decision made by the top commanders to allow the deployment of missiles such as ATACMS and Storm Shadow on Russian territory indicates a substantial change in strategy, showing a greater awareness of the need to arm Ukraine to fight against Russian forces, even if this increases the chances of an escalation of the conflict.